Hey guys, my name is Nick and welcome back to the channel, and in this tips video we're going to be going through a build and magnetising guide of the Chaos Space Marines Helbrute. One of the key units in my opinion, especially for Thousand Suns players looking for some range damage, but also without a codex just yet, we want to make sure our options are fully flexible. In order to get magnetising with the Helbrute, we can build up the model almost in its entirety. So the entire leg section can be built, most of the torso can be built except the two side components, which you can see there, leaving the entire torso hollow. We can add the head, the decorative part on the front, the exhaust pipes and the backbone piece, and then we put that to one side. With all the weapons though, we can build most of these up except the shoulder components and the interchangeable component on the weapons. However, I do recommend adding the flamer that you can do on each of the fists. So one of the key things here is you can have the flamer or you can have the combi bolters, but nobody's really going to notice the difference, and they are real fiddly to magnetise. So we can build up the combi bolters there, as you can see. And if you don't run combi bolters, you get two blanking panels to go over each of the left and right fists, just as I'm showing there. So real easy with lots of hollow components here to start embedding those magnets. So as you can see there, I've built the left and the right fist and those four components there. Then we've got the heavy weapons. Now the heavy weapons have a single shoulder common joint. One of the key things with magnetising is identifying those common areas. We can add the plasma cannon there, which goes straight on without any issues. The Autocannon as well, and the multi-melter. They all go straight onto that universal shoulder joint. If we want to use the heavy bolters or the Lascannons, there is an intermediary component here, which kind of adds as a little bit of a spacer to beef it up. Now I'm keep spinning this round until I find which way round it goes. Not that way, not that way. There we go. So yeah, that is like an intermediary piece for the Lascannons and for the twin heavy bolters. So we need to be a bit conscious of how we're going to magnetise that to make sure that we can make the best use of all of the combined or the shared components, which in this case really is that shoulder piece. And you'll notice that I've left off the shoulder guards. When it comes to the close combat melee weapons, we've got the Scourge here, and I've built all of that up without the single common piece, which I'll get to in a second, as well as the giant Chaos Hammer. This is the problem area when you're magnetising. We can magnetise everything pretty much except this piece. This is the difficult piece, because that component I'm holding in my left hand on the screen is common to the integral part of the Scourge and the Hammer. And you can see me just lining that up there. If you were super clever and you wanted to be really picky about the extra weapons, you could do it, but I'm not going to demonstrate it in this video because I felt it was a bit too challenging to do, and you end up with lots and lots of loose components. So Power Scourge or Hammer, the Hammer is probably not the one you really want to do anyway. Moving on to the range weapon that you get with that, which is the missile launcher. This comes in three components, as you can see here, and I've left that completely unassembled in order to allow one of the magnetising options. So those are the problem areas of those two close combat weapons, and I don't think the Hammer's the right one to add, to be honest. So with all the components all kind of laid out, ready to go, we now need to work out all the magnetising options, and you can see here we've got 4 weapon types and 4 shoulder guards to work with, which is going to make our job that much easier. And the magnets that we're going to be using here are 3mm by 1mm, 3x3, 4x2 and 5x2. So I've got a full stack of these, and they're going to be used in specific ways as you go through the build. So some of these are going to be used for those variable ranged weapon options, and some are going to be concealed inside some of the hollow components, and that's going to be the larger pieces here. So make sure that we've got the appropriate drill bits to do this, but the 3x1 is quite critical, and 3x3, because that's going to fit inside our weapon options, as you can see me showing here. 3x1 is going to be the key one for that adjoining piece for the heavy bolters and the Lascannon option. That's the only place we're going to use it. It's lightweight, but just adds to the strength of the of that weapon build. When it comes to how you're going to magnetise this, you've got two choices. The first one here is to drill on those flat pieces and embed a magnet into the middle of it. So that's when you need the drill pieces. The alternative, though, is to get some slightly stronger and slightly bigger magnets and fit them inside the hollows. That way there's no drilling. I do recommend that you pack those out, though, to make sure that after continual use, the magnets do not come loose. That's the only real difference between packing on an inside vacant joint or a hollow joint compared to drilling it out where you've got far more surface area for the glue to adhere to. So we've got some remaining components here, which are the sides to the Helbrute. Now you get two per side, and one will allow you to put the weapon up in a higher position, and one will allow you to put it into a slightly lower position. So pick the build style that you want to do, and that fits into the side just like that. But we're not going to glue that in yet because we want to conceal some magnets inside this as one of our options. So with all that hollow space, we can play around with putting some of these larger magnets on the inside. Now, I do recommend going with as large as possible because that adhesion, the magnetic pull, has got to go through 2 layers of plastic, about 4 or 5 millimeters of plastic. So you do want them to be fairly strong. And as I said, if you're going to go with the internal options as far as possible, you want super glue and green stuff to pack those in so they don't come loose after continual gaming. Because if they do come loose, that will break the whole purpose of magnetizing. Because once they're in there, you won't be able to get back in there to fix any of the loose magnets. So without teaching you to suck eggs and how to use glue and green stuff, I've just gone ahead here and just shown the net result. So inside the hollow Helbrute are those 5x2mm magnets that I spoke about earlier. So these are larger ones here. I've glued that on the inside and then packed around them with green stuff to make sure that they do not come loose. Now I've used a hybrid method here. I said you could put them inside the hollows or you could drill them out. I've gone with the drilling on the actual weapons themselves. I just felt that was more my style, really. There's no reason to go either way round. You could fit the magnets inside the hollows of those shoulders, or you can drill them out and put in those 3x3mm ones. And you can see here that net result. The pull is perfect. They're not going to come super loose during switching them in and out, and they work just fine. So let's take a look at the individual weapons here. You can see how I've packed the green stuff here inside the hollow of the fist, and then on the inside of the alternating combi bolters or the flat panels that you can use if you're not going to go with those weapon upgrades and spend the points. So you have to be a little bit careful. You have to trim the green stuff around to make sure everything lies flat in the build, which means we can now have a shooty one, or we can now have the pure close combat melee monster. And they just both easily pop off, so that's the interchangeable power fists and the interchangeable range weapons on them, so we can put those to one side. The more complicated magnetizing is on the ranged weapons here. So I've taken this common piece here, and as you can see, I've applied that magnet through the middle. Now, you will need to drill for all of these weapons. There's no hollow piece that you can probably get away with on this. And the orientation of your magnets has to be consistent through each of the ranged weapons, especially when we come to the adjoining piece we were talking about on the Lascannons and the heavy bolters. So the plasma cannon fits straight on. It is a little bit awkward, but you can get it straight on there. It does magnetize, but it's also kind of gripped itself with the plastic build, so that helps with the adhesion and not it coming loose. The autocannon is exactly the same. The twin autocannon just clips on and clips off. And again, the same with the multi-melter. Just make sure that when you're drilling out, you are drilling roughly in alignment of where the magnets are going to go. And I've put them along the bottom because that's where the larger piece of plastic was to drill into without causing any damage. This is the interconnecting piece. This is where I've used the 3mm by 1mm magnet. And then I've used the stronger ones again on the Lascannon there. And again, this is where you want the orientation to be spot on so that the magnetic orientation is common through all 3 components here. So the shoulder common piece, the adjoining piece, and the weapon tip. And that will just help with the adhesion of those magnets all the way through the weapons. When it comes to the missile launcher, you can use the bigger magnet because there's a big hollow space, no problem there. Just remember to pack it out with green stuff. Again, for consistency though, I've just drilled into these, and as you can see, I've built the Power Scourge version rather than the hammer. The hammer's just rubbish. So you can now build a fully ranged version or a hybrid combat with the Scourge or any of the ranged weapons. The big thing about Thousand Suns is that ranged anti-tank damage. Quite a common build of the Helbrute is to go with the twin Lascannon and missile launcher. But with some Cult of Duplicity shenanigans, close combat ones with a bit of range actually can be quite good. That Power Scourge does add an awful lot of attacks with double damage, which is pretty cool if you can just teleport them across the battlefield and cause your opponent some pain. So these are a number of drill bits that I've used to do the 3mm, 4 and 5, but I did always drill a 1mm pilot hole before doing anything else, just to make sure there was a guide for the larger drill bits. So that's it then, guys, a fairly simple magnetizing guide to the Helbrute. As I said, the only concern is the Scourge or the hammer. You could do it, but the angle of the magnets would be a challenge because you've got one sort of pointing downwards at sort of 135 degrees, and then you'll have another one going up at sort of 25 degrees, and it would end up being a bit of a mess. A lot of green stuff, a lot of embedded magnets, and be quite tricky to do. You could do it, but as I said, it's a bit of a pain. Everything else though, pretty straightforward. As I said, you've got the two options. That is to completely hide the magnets, but do go for a higher pull magnet, so something with a higher rating or a higher size, because it's got to adhere through the plastic and obviously potentially a layer of paint as well. So I went with the hybrid option because that worked really well with the pull I wanted on the two weapons. So embedded inside the hull, which was the 5x2mm, and then all the weapons had sort of 3x3 or 3x2 or 3x1. I'll leave a list of all the magnets that I've used in the description below as usual, but I hope you found this useful. I hope you learned something new. If you did, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I shall catch you guys on the next video, which hopefully might be painting these.